Picture this.
Okay.
You have a bucket,
Yep.
and that bucket represents your ability to deal with stress.
That's it. Your capacity.
So throughout the day,
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of things are filling up your bucket.
Exactly.
Work deadlines, family drama,
Yep.
that never-ending to-do list,
Those names.
they're all just pouring into your bucket.
Pouring in.
But here's the thing. It's not just those big, obvious stressors.
Right.
It's also the everyday things that we often overlook.
Absolutely. The small things add up.
Spinal Physio gives this great example of
Yeah.
someone who runs for 30 minutes,
Okay.
3 times a week, and they think that's manageable.
Totally manageable.
But then you add in their physically demanding job.
Mm-hmm.
They garden on the weekends.
Okay.
They're playing with their kids every evening.
Right.
Suddenly that bucket's overflowing,
It is. It's full.
even though
Yeah.
none of those things on their own seem like too much.
Exactly. But it's that cumulative effect.
Wow. So it's the cumulative
That-
effect of everything
It all adds up.
that really matters.
It does.
And it's not like our bucket magically empties at the end of each day, right?
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately not.
So we're carrying this bucket around with us,
Yeah, we are.
and the contents are spilling over into the next day and the next.
Exactly. It's a carryover effect.
So that's why some days we can handle a tough workout.
Yeah.
And other days, the same workout leaves you feeling drained.
Drained. Totally.
So it's not just about pushing through. It's about recognizing that our capacity fluctuates.
And respecting those limitations.
We need to be more attuned to those shifts.
Yeah.
So how do we get a bigger bucket? Because honestly, I could use a little more capacity in my life.
Well, one of the ways is to understand ourselves better
Okay.
and the interplay of different aspects of our lives.
Right?
They introduced this really cool idea called the health hexagon.
Oh, the health hexagon. I've heard of this.
Yeah. Basically, it's a framework
Okay.
for understanding these 6 key areas
Right.
that impact our capacity and how to expand it.
Okay. What are those 6 areas?
We've got physical load, cognitive load, emotional load,
Okay.
spiritual offloading, sleep, and diet.
So each of these elements can either add to the bucket
Right.
or help empty it,
It's about finding that balance.
depending on how we manage them.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. So the balance across these 6 areas
Uh-huh.
is what really matters
For sure.
for long-term health and well-being.
It all contributes to that sense of well-being.
This is making me think about my own life in a whole new way.
It's a great framework for understanding yourself. But what happens when that bucket inevitably overflows? I mean, we've all been there, stressed, exhausted, maybe even experiencing physical pain.
You're right. We've all been there.
Yeah.
That overflowing bucket
Yeah.
and exceeding our capacity
Mm-hmm.
can manifest in all sorts of ways,
Okay.
like pain, anxiety, insomnia.
Oh, wow.
It's like our body and mind are waving red flags,
Right.
telling us something needs to change.
So the bucket theory is not just some abstract concept.
Right.
It has real-world implications
Real-world implications.
for our health
Yeah.
and happiness.
Absolutely.
This is all so insightful. I'm already starting to think about which areas of my hexagon need a little more attention. But before we go there, let's explore the idea that hurt doesn't equal harm, a point that really stood out to me from the materials.
That's a great point. Hurt doesn't equal harm.
Yeah.
It's a concept that often gets overlooked
Yeah.
because we tend to think any pain means damage.
Right.
But pain is actually much more complex than that.
So sometimes pain is just a signal that we're pushing our limits, not necessarily that we've injured ourselves.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
The source uses a great example of weight-bearing exercise.
Okay.
Our bones need stress to stay strong,
Uh-huh.
but too much stress can lead to pain.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that Yeah. balance between challenge and recovery.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And it applies to so many areas of life, right? We need a certain amount of stress to grow and learn, but chronic stress without adequate recovery can lead to burnout and all sorts of problems.
It's true. It's that balance that we're looking for.
This is giving me so much to think about. But before we get too deep into applying these ideas, let's take a closer look at each of the 6 elements of the health hexagon. Starting with physical load. What are some practical strategies for managing those everyday physical demands?
Yeah, let's unpack those strategies.
Okay.
And empower you to create a more sustainable and enjoyable approach to physical well-being.
All right.
So let's start with physical load.
Okay. Let's do it.
When we talked about physical load,
Yeah.
it's easy to fixate on exercise.
Right.
But as we've discussed,
Yeah.
it's about so much more than that.
Okay.
It's the accumulation of all the physical demands
Right.
that you face throughout your day.
Right. It's everything from our jobs to how much we move around in our daily lives.
Yeah,
It's almost like our bodies are constantly on in some way.
exactly. And finding that balance
Yeah.
between activity and rest
Right.
is crucial
Okay.
for managing physical load
Got it.
and preventing our bucket from overflowing.
Right.
The source emphasizes that both extremes can be detrimental.
That's interesting. So too much rest could be just as bad as too much activity. What would that even look like?
Well, imagine someone
Okay.
who is recovering from an injury
Right.
and they're told to rest completely.
Okay.
While rest is initially essential for healing,
Yeah.
prolonged inactivity can lead to muscle weakness, decreased flexibility, and even make them more susceptible to further injuries
Right.
down the line. It's about finding that sweet spot
Okay.
where the body is challenged,
Yeah.
just enough to stay resilient.
So it's about finding that middle ground, the Goldilocks zone of physical exertion.
Yeah.
Not too much, not too little, but just right.
I like that. The Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's not always easy to find that balance,
Right.
especially in today's world where we're often encouraged to push ourselves to the limit.
Yeah, that hustle mentality.
Absolutely. So for someone with a physically demanding job, like a construction worker or a nurse, how can they manage that load and prevent those aches and pains that often come with it?
Well, prioritizing proper body mechanics is crucial.
Okay.
Things like lifting correctly,
Got it.
using tools to reduce strain,
Okay.
and taking frequent micro breaks.
Micro breaks. I've never really considered that. So even just standing up and stretching for a minute or two can help.
Exactly. Those micro breaks are key. The source points out that incorporating small movements throughout the day can prevent that buildup of tension and fatigue.
I love that. Little changes can make a big difference. But what about exercise specifically? How does that factor into the physical load equation?
Exercise is essential.
Okay.
It builds strength, endurance, and resilience,
Right.
all of which
Yeah.
help us handle those everyday demands.
Okay.
But as we talked about before,
Yeah.
finding that balance
Right, yeah.
between challenge and recovery is key.
Okay.
Pushing yourself to the limit.
Uh-huh.
Every single workout can actually be counterproductive.
So it's not about no pain, no gain. That's a relief.
Yeah, the source actually challenges that notion.
Okay.
They suggest that consistent pain is often a signal to back off,
Oh,
to
interesting.
adjust your approach.
Got it.
Remember, hurt doesn't equal harm,
Right.
but ignoring persistent pain can lead to bigger problems down the line.
It's like our bodies are constantly talking to us. We just need to learn how to listen. So rest and recovery are just as important as the exercise itself.
Exactly. And that includes not only getting enough sleep, but also things like stretching
Uh-huh.
and even just taking some time to relax and unwind.
Yeah.
It's about giving your body the time and space it needs to repair and rebuild.
Okay, so we're talking about physical load, but what about our mental energy? We talked earlier about cognitive load, all those mental demands that we face throughout the day. How do we manage that and prevent our brains from feeling fried?
Just like our bodies need rest,
Yes.
so do our minds.
Right.
One of the best things you can do is prioritize focus
Okay.
and try to minimize distractions.
Easier said than done,
Right.
especially in our hyper-connected world.
It's definitely a challenge,
Yeah.
but even small steps can make a difference.
Like what?
The source suggests creating a dedicated workspace,
Okay.
turning off notifications,
Got it.
and setting boundaries around work time.
So no more checking emails during dinner or scrolling through social media before bed. I'm starting to see a theme here.
Yeah, exactly. Those constant distractions
Yeah.
can really fragment our attention. Right.
And make it harder to focus on the task at hand,
Okay.
ultimately increasing our cognitive load.
Oh, wow.
The source even suggests that multitasking,
Yeah.
which we often wear as a badge of honor,
I know, right?
could actually be quite detrimental to our cognitive capacity.
Wow, multitasking is the enemy. I think I'm guilty of that one. So, learning to single task and give our full attention to one thing at a time could be a game changer.
It can be. It really can. And when you do find yourself feeling mentally overwhelmed,
Right.
there are tools you can use to create space for mental recovery.
Like what? Spill the beans.
Well, one technique that's been shown to be incredibly effective is mindfulness meditation.
Okay, mindfulness. It's one of those things I know I should be doing, but I've always been a bit intimidated by it. Is it really as simple as it sounds?
It can be, and that's the beauty of it. You can practice mindfulness anywhere, anytime. You don't need any special equipment or fancy studios, just a few moments of stillness and a willingness to tune in to your breath and your body. So it's like a mental reset button. helping us to declutter those racing thoughts and find a sense of calm amidst the chaos.
And this concept of the capacity bucket isn't just about avoiding negative things.
Okay.
It's also about creating space for joy, creativity, and connection.
This is fascinating. It's like having a personalized toolkit for managing our stress levels and overall well-being.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier that this concept of the capacity bucket isn't just about avoiding negative things.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
It's about recognizing that filling our bucket isn't always a bad thing.
Okay.
Challenging ourselves, pushing our limits,
Uh-huh.
those activities can add to our bucket,
Yeah.
but they also help us grow and become more resilient.
So it's like a tough workout might temporarily add stress, but it also makes us stronger in the long run.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance between pushing ourselves
Yeah.
and allowing time for recovery and restoration.
But what about our emotional lives? Where does that fit into the health hexagon?
Right. So emotions
Yeah.
play a huge role
Okay.
in how full our bucket gets. We
Uh-huh.
call that emotional load.
Yeah.
It's the impact of our feelings
Okay.
and relationships
Mm-hmm.
on our overall capacity.
So dealing with stress from family or work,
Yeah.
navigating those really challenging emotions, it's all contributing to our emotional load,
It is.
like an invisible weight we carry around.
It can be. And just like with physical and cognitive loads,
Right.
we need to find healthy ways to manage our emotions and create space for emotional recovery.
Okay.
Emotions have a powerful impact
Right.
on our overall well-being
Yeah,
and can definitely contribute to that feeling of an overflowing bucket.
I know it. Some days it feels like my emotions are taking up way more space in the bucket than anything else. But we can't just turn off our feelings, right?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Trying to suppress our emotions
Uh-huh.
often backfires.
Right.
The key is to acknowledge and process them in a healthy way.
So it's about giving ourselves permission to feel those feelings,
Hmm.
but also finding healthy ways to express and manage them.
Exactly. And the first step is simply becoming aware of what you're feeling. Taking a moment to pause and check in with yourself.
Yeah.
What am I feeling right now?
Right.
And why?
It's like becoming an emotional detective. And once we've identified those emotions, we can start to explore healthy coping mechanisms.
Exactly.
Okay.
That might involve journaling, talking to a trusted friend or therapist, or finding creative outlets.
I love the idea of creative expression. Sometimes words just aren't enough, and we need other ways to process those big feelings. It's like tapping into a different language, a language that our hearts and souls understand.
And don't underestimate the power of the relationship side of the health hexagon.
Oh, yeah.
Meaningful connections and social support can be incredibly effective at emptying your bucket.
So spending time with loved ones, having heart-to-heart conversations, those can actually help us de-stress and build resilience.
Exactly. It's not just about avoiding isolation.
Right.
It's about actively nurturing those relationships that bring us joy and a sense of belonging.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And when it comes to environment, create a space that feels calm and organized.
Yes, declutter your physical space, but also consider your digital environment.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to unsubscribe from those email lists that constantly bombard me with messages.
Exactly. Create an environment that supports your peace of mind.
Okay, so we've got physical load, cognitive load, and emotional load. But then there's this intriguing element called spiritual offloading. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's a unique concept. But essentially,
Yeah.
it's about finding ways to connect
Like-
with something larger than yourself.
Right.
Something that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning in life.
Okay.
It's not necessarily about religion.
Right.
More about finding those activities that nourish your soul.
So it could be spending time in nature, volunteering, practicing gratitude, or even just taking a few moments for quiet contemplation. It's about finding what resonates with you personally, right?
Absolutely. And the source highlights
Yeah.
that spiritual offloading can be incredibly powerful
Okay.
for reducing stress
Right.
and creating a sense of inner peace.
I love that. It's like remembering that we're part of something bigger, something more vast and mysterious than our everyday worries and struggles. And sometimes that shift in perspective can be all we need to lighten our load and find a sense of calm amidst the chaos.
Yeah, beautifully said.
And speaking of finding calm and balance,
Uh-huh.
it's time we turn our attention to those two elements of the health hexagon
Okay.
that are absolutely essential for overall well-being,
Right.
but often get neglected.
Yes.
In our fast-paced world, sleep and diet.
Sleep and diet, the cornerstones of health.
Sleep and diet, the cornerstones of health, right?
Ah.
But also the two areas that I personally struggle with the most.
You're not alone. They seem so simple in theory,
Yeah.
but in practice,
Uh-huh.
they can be incredibly challenging to
Right.
prioritize,
Yeah.
especially in our busy, always-on culture.
Right.
But the reality is, without adequate sleep
Uh-huh.
and proper nutrition,
Yeah.
our bodies and minds simply cannot function optimally.
Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty then.
Yeah.
Why is sleep so important? And how can we improve our sleep quality in a world that often feels designed to keep us awake?
Sleep is crucial for both our physical and mental restoration
Right.
during sleep.
Okay.
Our bodies repair tissues, consolidate memories,
Okay.
and release hormones that regulate mood, appetite, and energy levels.
So it's not just about feeling rested. It's about giving our bodies and minds the time they need to recharge and function at their best.
Sure.
But with our busy schedules and constant distractions, how do we actually make sleep a priority?
It definitely takes conscious effort,
Yeah.
but there are lots of practical things you can do to improve your sleep hygiene.
Okay, like what?
One of the most important is establishing a consistent sleep schedule.
Okay.
Going to bed and waking up around the same time each day,
Right.
even on weekends.
Wait, so those weekend sleep-ins are actually sabotaging my sleep?
They can be, unfortunately. While it's tempting to catch up on sleep on the weekends,
Really?
it actually disrupts our natural circadian rhythm,
Oh,
making it harder to fall asleep
right.
and wake up feeling refreshed
Got it.
come Monday morning.
Okay, so consistency is key.
Yeah.
But what about all those other things that impact our sleep, like stress, caffeine, alcohol, and screen time?
Those are all important factors as well.
Yeah.
Creating a relaxing bedtime routine,
Okay.
avoiding caffeine and alcohol in the hours before bed,
Right.
and limiting screen time in the evening
Got it.
can all contribute to a more restful night's sleep.
Okay.
When we're sleep deprived, our capacity bucket shrinks,
Mm-hmm.
leaving us more vulnerable to feeling overwhelmed.
So it's like starting the day with an already half-full bucket.
Exactly.
No wonder we feel drained and irritable when we haven't slept well.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Prioritizing quality sleep is essential for maintaining a healthy capacity bucket
Okay.
and being able to handle life's inevitable challenges. The source describes it as creating a sanctuary
There's sanctuary.
for sleep,
Yeah.
a space that signals to your body and mind that it's time to unwind and recharge.
I love that imagery. It makes sleep sound so luxurious. But let's be real. Sometimes, even when we do everything right, sleep can still be elusive.
Yeah.
Any tips for those of us who struggle with insomnia or just have a hard time quieting our minds at night?
Absolutely.
Uh,
One thing that often gets overlooked
yeah.
is the impact of diet on sleep.
Really?
Mm.
So that late night snacking habit might be contributing to my sleep struggles.
It's definitely possible.
Really?
Heavy meals close to bedtime
Uh-huh.
can disrupt sleep,
Okay.
as can consuming too much caffeine or sugar in the evening. But remember, it's all about balance and moderation. Right.
And a healthy diet is just one piece of the puzzle.
Processed foods might add to inflammation and stress, filling the bucket,
Well,
while nourishing your body with whole foods could support recovery and help empty it. It's about creating that whole environment of sleep hygiene, a consistent sleep schedule, relaxing rituals, a dark and quiet bedroom, and nourishing food choices that promote restful sleep.
and it's about finding what works best for you.
This is all so insightful. It's amazing how much we can learn by simply taking a closer look at these seemingly everyday aspects of our lives.
This whole health hexagon framework is such a helpful way to look at our well-being.
It is.
It's not about striving for perfection in every area, but rather about finding a sustainable balance that works for us.
And that balance is going to look different for each individual. What fills and empties your bucket might be totally different from what works for someone else.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's about paying attention to our own unique needs and finding what helps us feel our best.
Precisely. It's about tuning into your body and mind, experimenting with different activities within each area of the health hexagon, and finding what helps you maintain a healthy capacity.
So if we're feeling constantly overwhelmed, like our bucket is always overflowing,
Yeah.
that's a sign we need to take a closer look at these different areas of our lives
Yeah.
and see where we can make some adjustments.
Absolutely. And it's not about making drastic changes overnight.
Right.
It's about making small, sustainable shifts that support your overall well-being.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I have a much clearer understanding of how this capacity bucket works and how the health hexagon can help us manage it effectively.
It's a powerful tool for taking control of our well-being and creating a life that feels more balanced and fulfilling.
So if we imagine each side of this hexagon as like supporting our overall well-being,
Yeah,
a weakness in one area might make the whole structure a bit shaky, right?
exactly. And by looking at each side of the health hexagon, we can start to identify what fills our personal capacity buckets,
Uh-huh.
and more importantly, what helps to empty them.
Hmm.
And speaking of gaining a new perspective, I want to circle back to this idea that hurt doesn't equal harm,
Hmm.
because that's a concept that really resonated with me.
It is a powerful idea
Yeah.
and one that can really shift our relationship with pain
Right.
because often we associate pain with damage.
Yeah.
But the reality is,
Yeah.
pain is a much more complex experience than that.
So sometimes pain is just a signal that we're pushing our limits, not necessarily that we've done any real damage.
That's it. A
Yeah.
source uses a great example
Yeah.
of weight-bearing exercise.
Yeah. We need to put stress on our bones to keep them strong.
Right.
But too much stress
Uh-huh.
can lead to pain. It's about finding that sweet spot
Right.
where we're challenging our bodies
Uh-huh.
without overloading them.
And that applies to so many areas of life, right? We need a certain amount of stress to grow and adapt, but too much can lead to burnout and overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance, that delicate dance between challenge and recovery.
Absolutely. It's a dance
Yeah.
that requires both self-awareness
Uh-huh.
and a willingness to experiment.
Okay.
What works for one person
Yeah.
might not work for another.
Right.
It's all about tuning into your own body
Right.
and finding what feels right for you.
I love that. It's about empowering ourselves to be the experts on our own bodies and our own well-being. And speaking of experts, the source material also touches on a really interesting point about the relationship between patients and healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to our health, there are actually two experts in the room.
That's right. There's the healthcare professional
Yeah.
who brings their knowledge and experience,
Uh-huh.
and then there's the patient
Right.
who brings their unique understanding
Okay.
of their own body
Uh-huh.
and their own life.
So it's not about blindly following doctors' orders. It's about engaging in a dialogue, asking questions, and figuring out what advice truly resonates with our own experiences and our own intuition. Because ultimately, we're the ones who have to live in our bodies,
You
right?
got it.
And
We have
heal.
to be active participants in our own healing journey, and that
Yeah.
requires
Yeah.
both trust and our
Right.
own inner wisdom
Right.
and a willingness to seek guidance and support
Okay.
from those who can offer valuable insights and expertise.
Right.
This takes us right back to the health hexagon,
Oh, okay.
where it's not about achieving some perfect ideal,
Right.
but finding what works best for you.
Such a powerful reminder. And with that in mind, I'm curious to explore how these 6 elements of the health hexagon might shift and evolve throughout our lives. After all, what fills our bucket at age 25 might be totally different from what fills it at age 55, right?
That's a fantastic point. It's
Yeah.
not static.
Right.
It evolves with us.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How do we adapt the health hexagon to meet our needs as we navigate different stages of life, careers, and personal growth?
All right. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think how these different elements of our lives,
Yeah.
physical, cognitive, emotional, spiritual, they all contribute to that metaphorical bucket.
Right. And as we navigate different life stages, our priorities and capacities naturally shift. What fills our buckets in our 20s might look totally different from what fills them in our 50s or even 80s.
That's so true. The health hexagon isn't static. It evolves with us.
Okay.
For example, in our younger years, we might have more physical energy, but
Yeah.
as we age, prioritizing recovery and managing physical stress becomes even more crucial.
So it's not about trying to hold on to some youthful ideal of endless energy. It's about adapting and recognizing that our needs change over time.
Exactly. And the same goes for cognitive load.
Okay.
A young student
Mm-hmm.
might thrive on intense studying,
Right.
absorbing tons of new information,
Yeah.
while someone in a demanding career might need to prioritize focus and create more space for mental recovery.
So it's about being mindful of our capacity at each stage of life and adjusting our approach accordingly. But what about the emotional realm? Does our emotional load change as we age?
It certainly can.
Okay.
In our younger years, we might be more focused on building relationships,
Yeah.
navigating the ups and downs of early adulthood.
Right.
As we age, we might face different challenges like caregiving responsibilities, loss, or health issues that require different emotional coping mechanisms.
So it's not that our emotional lives become easier or harder. It's just that the landscape changes
Yeah.
and we need to adapt our emotional toolkit accordingly.
That's a great way to put it. And spiritual offloading can play a significant role
Okay.
in navigating those emotional shifts,
Right?
finding ways to connect with something bigger than
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's through nature, community, or personal reflection,
Yeah.
can provide a sense of grounding
Right.
and perspective
Yeah.
during times of transition.
It's like having an anchor, something to hold on to when the storms of life inevitably arise. And speaking of storms, how do sleep and diet factor into this evolving health hexagon?
Well, the need for quality sleep
Right.
and nourishing food remains constant
Uh-huh.
throughout our lives.
Okay.
But how we approach these elements might need to adjust
Right.
as we age.
Yeah.
Our sleep patterns might shift,
Okay.
and we might need to be more intentional about creating a conducive sleep environment
Uh-huh.
and addressing any underlying health conditions
Right.
that impact sleep.
And what about diet? Do our nutritional needs change as we get older?
Absolutely. Our metabolism naturally slows down as we age,
Right.
and our bodies might require different nutrients
Mhm.
to support optimal health. We might need to pay more attention to portion sizes,
Okay.
prioritize nutrient-dense foods, and address any digestive issues that arise.
So it's not just about eating healthy in a general sense. It's about understanding how our dietary needs evolve and adapting our food choices accordingly.
Exactly. The key takeaway is
Yeah.
that the health hexagon is a dynamic framework,
Okay.
not a rigid set of rules.
Right.
It's about understanding these 6 interconnected elements
Uh-huh.
and finding what works best for you at each stage of your life.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. But before we wrap up, I want to revisit the concept of hurt doesn't equal harm. Because I think this idea is particularly relevant when we consider how our bodies and minds change over time.
You're right. It's an important concept to keep in mind.
Yeah.
As we age, we
Uh,
might experience
yeah.
more aches and pains.
Right.
But it's crucial to remember
Okay.
that not all pain is a sign of serious damage.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It's simply a signal
Yeah.
that we need to adjust our approach, modify our activities,
Mhm.
or prioritize rest and recovery.
It's like our bodies are giving us feedback, telling us to slow down, pay attention, and make some adjustments.
Exactly. And learning to interpret those signals is essential
Yeah.
for maintaining health and vitality
Oh,
as
yeah.
we age.
This entire conversation has really shifted my perspective on health and well-being. It's not about striving for some unattainable ideal. It's about finding that sweet spot, that dynamic balance across all these different elements of our lives.
Well said.
Mm.
And the beauty of the health hexagon is that it empowers you
Yeah.
to take ownership of your well-being.
Right.
You can start making small changes today
Right.
that will have a ripple effect
Uh-huh.
on your health and happiness
Right.
for years to come.
It's like we're creating a roadmap for a healthier, more fulfilling life. A life where we're not just surviving, but truly thriving. And speaking of thriving, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the health hexagon,
Yeah.
let's leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, what's that?
You are the architect of your own well-being. Start paying attention to your own unique rhythms, experiment with different approaches, and never underestimate the power of small, consistent actions.
That's such a powerful message. And remember,
Yeah.
you don't have to figure it all out overnight. Just start with one small step, one area of your health hexagon that you want to nurture, and go from there.
Beautifully said. And don't forget to celebrate those small victories along the way.
Exactly. So, until next time, deep divers,
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep experimenting,
Keep learning.
and keep listening to the wisdom of your own body and mind.